Hi, I'm Libero, a digital artist. I'll be drawing every day for the next week and bringing you along with me to test the advice we all received at some point as artists. Just draw every day to improve, because I know there has to be some truth to that, but I'm also here to contradict that advice because I already have some experience with drawing every day and it's not all good. To really test myself, I'll be making full little landscapes like this, featuring various creatures every day. This piece actually isn't a part of the challenge this time round, so let's say goodbye to it and get to the real stuff. Day 1 started off really strong. I had inspiration, motivation, and time from not needing to edit the day prior on my side. I actually ended up spending 4 hours give or take on this, which was double the amount of maximum time I wanted to allot myself for each day. Starting the challenge on such a high with so much spare time was actually daunting. I worried I wouldn't be able to beat this piece during the week, as I knew I wouldn't have the same spare 4 hours. Plus, I was even a little bit scared to try, as failure was a steeper hole than before. What if I don't like any of the pieces after this and just end up in a burnout, unable to draw for the rest of the month? So as much as I like this piece, I wish I hadn't made it during this challenge, or at least for the first piece. That way I wouldn't be scared for day 2, and also I would have some serious improvement to show. But to set the record straight, improving isn't actually my goal with this challenge. Sure, it would be fun to find out the truth behind drawing every day will make you a better artist, but as an artist who's been drawing the majority of my life, gone through year-long art burnouts, and also spent months at a time drawing daily, I know the answer to that question isn't a simple yes or no, it's a maybe with a lot of nuance attached to it. I won't be diving headfirst into answering all of that right now, because truthfully I would get caught up on a lot of things and distracted by the art in front of me that I would like to speak to you about, as well as the day-to-day experience of the challenge itself. What I will say is don't set yourself on the endless quest of drawing every day, at least not to this level of a background and rendered. It will likely lead to burnout and there is no completing the quest, so no extra dopamine from taking off the task to keep you going. Instead, set yourself missions more easily completed. For example, drawing every day for a week, 2 weeks, a month, or a year if you're feeling really brave. And don't focus on the improvement aspect, or at least try not to. Instead, focus on the fact you're building a new habit, experimenting in a new medium, or just challenging yourself to be more creative, having to come up with a new idea every single day. I actually found myself focusing a lot on that last goal in my challenge. Something I took note of last time I did this challenge was I prefer the paintings I was making on days where I was drawing from the world around me. But I'll talk more about this later. I was completely content with day 1. The fish and foliage were some of my favourite bits to paint, and the ripples being the most challenging but rewarding. I was completely terrified for day 2, but having a reminder for my goals, I moved on to it. I started day 2 off by going on a walk and keeping an eye out for anything around me that just looked like the home for a creature or just had details that sparked joy, even if I couldn't pinpoint where the joy came from. I took several photos and did several sketches before landing on this one. I knew I would be really challenging myself to get this piece done how I wanted it to look because I don't really like painting clouds. Or it's not that I don't like them, I just don't think I'm good at them, so I don't really enjoy painting them. But this piece clicked something in me because I didn't hate them and I kind of enjoyed the process. It might be because the clouds and the dragon aren't the only things you can focus on in the painting. The tree adds more visual interest and allows the clouds to be a bit more simpler, leaving our dragon friend with all the focus, as the rest fades into complementary background noise. Speaking about our dragon friend, I want to tell you a bit about what inspired him. Although it wasn't like this for this specific walk, I really love going on walks at sunset because the clouds are all tinted orange against the deepening blue background. Everything is so colourful and it's one of my favourite times of the day. Occasionally, you'll get really wispy clouds that dance across the sky in strip formations. They remind me of dragons in a way, almost like they're carrying the sun away to give the moon room to be, although I didn't completely commit to that idea in this painting, as he is instead playing with some bird friends. And I say bird, but they are very loosely inspired by birds, having a lot more dragon-esque features and more wings than the usual bird has, or at least the last time I checked. In case you couldn't tell, I like day 2 a lot. It's on par with day 1, but not quite an obvious winner, and fulfilling the goal of beating day 1 was a big boost. But now I had the problem of the goal rolling over to day 3, and I had no idea what to do. So I reminded myself of what I said earlier about not chasing the improvement aspect, and accepted it was likely I wouldn't love at least one of the 7 days. Tomorrow's might just be that piece. But I wouldn't find out by not starting. I thought I would try to play it safe by leaning into things that I'm already very comfortable with drawing. Waterfalls, mountains, and lots of greenery are all subjects I already know and can execute well. But it was a problem this time around, as I just felt like I was ripping off paintings I had already made and loved. Plus, having something I could directly compare it to that I liked didn't make me like the piece anymore. Also, going into it expecting that I probably wasn't going to like the outcome definitely did affect the outcome. Why work hard on something you don't think you're going to love? So despite not loving day 3, it taught me an important lesson. That I was right that I wouldn't like all 7 days, but I was wrong to assume from the start of the painting that I wouldn't like it. My efforts were affected by this and just turned my thoughts into a reality. But it was a lesson worth learning. So I really wanted to like day 4's painting after leaving day 3 not so much liking it. The vision in my head was there, I just had to get it out, so I started more monotonous to be safe, as I think the similar but different colours in yesterday's piece maybe contributed to the dislike. By starting monotonous, I just had to focus on the contrast and build up pops of colour. It worked, I did really start liking it, but with a vision so strong in my head, I was getting a bit ahead of myself. It felt too empty, so I started to dislike it. But of course I would, a new painting's going to be empty, I've not had time to add stuff to it yet. Here's where the lesson from yesterday comes in. Instead of throwing the towel in and accepting liking only 50% of the art was still a good ratio, I pushed through with the same effort and even started experimenting, especially with the clone tools. We were besties by the end of this piece, and if it was feeling empty, something that clones everything is going to fill it up quite quickly. If you don't already know about the clone tool on Procreate, it's so helpful and very underutilized in my opinion. If this is your first time hearing about it, I'll link a short tutorial on how to use it. I knew I wanted to add a shark to this piece because it had been a while since I drew a sea creature and it had been requested over on my Instagram. But to fit the piece into a 3-hour time slot, I did skip referencing. I don't actually know what shark this is. I think I was trying to play it safe and go with something like a great white, but it could possibly pass as a bull shark. I discovered bull sharks when I had a phase where all I could do is watch river monsters, and there was a specific episode where they were featured. Although he didn't end up catching one, he did catch another really cool fish that I think was supposed to be a deep sea fish. And I did say river monsters, but don't worry, bull sharks are found very rarely in rivers. They're the only shark that can be found in rivers as well. So yeah, long story short, I had a phase where I was really interested in fish. I spent a lot of time drawing them. This piece was a fun throwback. I wasn't going to neglect having a little creature or dragon of some sort in here somewhere as well. I'm really glad to say that I did love day 4. It might actually be one of my favourites, as it was one of the 2 that I turned into prints. I found myself grasping at straws a bit for day 5. I know I couldn't use too much green or blue, as all my other art so far had been very centered around it. So again, I had no idea what to draw, until I remembered a trip I went on last year, and I took this reference. You might recognize it if you're from Hunstanton. I was only there for about a week, but I saw so much that inspired me, including this cliff. So I took a photo and I sketched over it. Then I left it alone for a year until this point, which I revived it, and it felt a bit weird to finish art that my brain came up with last year. Yeah, so the rocks looked a bit like a dragon's head to me. In the original sketch, I drew it as a skull because the rocks looked more bone-colored, but I wasn't feeling like drawing bones this time around and wanted it to be brighter, so I did that, and I kind of think I need to redraw it. The sketch did go kind of hard. I still like it though, so don't get me wrong there. I also found myself using the technique I picked up on day 2 to draw these clouds, and I still like them just as much as the others. It was so rewarding to realize I've learned something new. I think I'll be drawing more clouds from now on. By now, I'm used to drawing more smaller creatures in my pieces, with the focus being more on the landscape, but this guy's just gigantic. The whole time I was trying to think of a story for him, but my mind went blank. What do you think his story could be? The scales probably give away that I only spent 2.5 hours on this piece. I could have made them more detailed if I wanted to, but I was on a bit of a time crunch. By the end of this piece, I did truly feel out of ideas, despite knowing what I want to draw for day 7. I think that's probably been what I struggled with most this challenge, finding ideas for every day. I was again inspired by my Hunstanton trip. I will say very loosely, as the photo looks nothing like what I ended up drawing, but something about this piece ended up feeling more simpler. Compared to the large backgrounds I had been doing, I really felt like I just needed that for one day. Especially as I had already planned what I wanted to do for the last day, so this piece was going to be my more relaxed day if I was going to have one. Based off of everything I've said so far and shown, I wouldn't blame you if you assumed my comfort thing to draw was dragons or fish. It's actually cats. For the longest time, all I could draw was cats, and this one's based on my own, Twinkle, and I decided to make her the only creature in today's painting. By doing this, it made it feel a bit more personal, a bit more like a portrait, if you will, so I felt like I could focus more on all of the details instead of implying detail. Shading and painting all of the leaves individually was actually one of my favourite bits. I have no idea what plant I'm supposed to be painting, but it's definitely not lavender like in the original photo. Cacti came completely out of nowhere. I just wanted to have a plant that went upright to fill a bit more space and add some visual difference to all the other plants. Despite that idea, it still felt a bit too empty, so I experimented with these flowers, intentionally leaning into impressionism. I again spent about 2.5 hours on this piece and called it Cacti Cat. I was really glad to see when I posted it elsewhere. It was one of the favourites from the challenge, which I really appreciated because for the longest time I didn't draw backgrounds or dragons. So in a way, with the cat, I was going back to my roots and people still liked what I do. Now the daunting task of day 7 has arrived. By this point I had really noticed my habits improving. Putting the time aside to draw every day became a lot easier, and also finding inspiration. Despite saying how hard it was for every piece, I did find it easier to do so because I was starting to look more deliberately everywhere for it. I don't know how many other artists will relate to this, but the fear of drawing also decreased. Something I found when I wasn't drawing as often was I was actually scared to draw. The less paintings I made, the more pressure there was for it to be a good one. So by doing this challenge, I took a lot of pressure off of every single one being good. It had also proven to myself that I did like them most of the time, meaning that if I wasn't drawing as often, there still wasn't much to be scared about. Ultimately, should you draw every day? Yes, but only for a set period of time. I don't think I would have gotten through this challenge if I didn't have a finish line in sight. It will completely depend on the person though. It felt appropriate to end the challenge with a redraw. I've come a long way since the last redraw I shared with you. I had a whole burnout starting in December of 2022 that lasted about 8 months, and despite starting to try draw again, I didn't really get my spark back until the first time I attempted this challenge in February. It helped me so much that I'm implementing it as a routine thing for me to do. It did take a few more creative liberties this time round compared to last, mostly with how I've expanded the background, since backgrounds are what I focus a lot on at the moment. It felt appropriate and I think it added a lot to the storytelling, but the change probably spoken about the most is my style. The first time around I drew this, I spent about 18 hours, and I aimed for it to be as realistic as possible, going so far as to trace the sketch despite trying to hide it. And this is probably the first time I'm admitting to it. Now that's not a bad thing when you're learning, but I definitely should have admitted to it. I also ended up using a lot of foliage brushes to get things done for me, which again, no bad thing, they fill in a lot of blank space quite quickly. But for me personally, I didn't like how they looked so lifeless compared to everything I had drawn by hand. So while to many people my current style is a downgrade, I love it so much more now that I have adapted to be able to do everything myself. Whilst not testing my patience, I spent about 5 hours on this. And you never know, I might go back to realism. I possibly have 50 years of creation ahead of me, and I don't want to be stuck in the same box the whole time. As for including a dragon or creature in this piece, I thought it'd be appropriate to tie it in using my adventurer's cloak. It might be really sad if you think about it for too long, but I was specifically referencing the dragons in this painting. Like I said, don't think about it, he went from natural causes. And I like to think before that, he was a companion to the adventurer. So I want to quickly talk about another reason I did this challenge. Content. You can probably tell by the editing and my voiceover, this is the first video I've done like this for YouTube, and it was pretty scary to make. Having a set challenge to follow really helped me with filming and figuring out what to say. And on that note, I really love day 7. I'm so glad we finished the challenge. Thank you so much for watching. I'll have a bit of a montage to show off all the paintings. If you have a favourite, I'd love to know which one, and I'll be sure to do this challenge again soon.